Alright, 62780, which is contained site cleanup criteria. 750 post-active remediation monitoring. Groundwater monitoring should be performed following the completion of the active groundwater remediation. Soil remediation is described in Rule 62780, 700 and Florida Administration Codes, and left the department heads to curb with the ground sampling is unnecessary based on the site specific condition. The active ground remediation has met no further action criteria to section 62780 the level criteria in subsection 62780 718 Florida Administration Code, an electrical paper copy of the post-active remediation monitoring plan pursuant to the provisions of section 62780 including analytical results demonstrating this conclusion, shall be submitted to the person responsible for site rehabilitation to the Department of Review. The Department shall provide the person responsible for site rehabilitation with written approval of the positive activity remediation monitoring plan, notify the person responsible for site rehabilitation in writing and stating that the reason while the post-active remediation plan does not contain the information adequate for the support and inclusion of applicable post-active remediation monitoring criteria 62780 Florida Administration codes have been met. 3. If positive remedial action plan is incomplete in any respect, the insufficient to satisfy the objective subsection 62780 Florida Administration Code, the Department shall inform the person responsible for site rehabilitation pursuant to the paragraph 62, 78752B Florida Administration Code. The person responsible for site rehabilitation shall submit to the Department for the review an electronic paper copy of the revised post-active remediation monitoring plan. The address and deficiency for 30 days after the receiving the notice. If deficiencies are not timely corrected or cannot be corrected, the person responsible for site rehabilitation shall assume the implementation of the approved remediation plan within 30 days after the receipt of the notice. The monitoring plan shall be performed as specified in post-active remediation monitoring plan approval as follows. A minimum of 2 monitoring wells is required. At least one well shall be located with the down gradient edge of the plumb. At least one of the wells shall be located within the area of the highest groundwater contamination or directly adjacent to the area with the highest ground contamination accessible. For example, an underground structure, under a structure. B. The designated monitoring well should be sampled at quarterly frequency specified in positive active remediation plan for analysis of the contaminants with the present prior to the initiation of the active remediation. C. Water levels in the designated wells and piezometers shall be made within 24 hours initiating each sample event. Within the time frame specified in Table A, located at the end of the Rule 62, 7, 800, 900 for the cleanup agreement document, and the person responsible for site rehabilitation shall submit the Department of Review electronic paper copy of the post-active remediation monitoring plan. A report. The report shall include the analytical results, laboratory report, and chain custody of the record of the Form 62 780-902. The equivalent chain of the custody forms include all items required by the 62 780-902. The tables required pursuant to subparagraph 62 780 600 27 Florida Administration Codes, updated as applicable to the site map that illustrate with the analytical results of the water level evaluation information summed in a table of the flow map. If analysts of the groundwater indicate the concentration of applicable contaminants exceeding the action level specified in the post-active remediation plan, approval of the wells shall be resampled no later than 30 days after the initial positive result is known. The result of the sampling resampled and confirmed with the applicable action plan as are excluded with the monitoring plan is described in paragraph 62 780 754D, and Florida Administration Code shall be signed and sealed in appropriate registered professional performance to the 62 780 400 Florida Administration Code shall include a proposal to perform a supplemental site assessment. Submit the supplemental site assessment report pursuant to the Rule 62 780 600 Florida Administration Codes. To continue the implementation of the approved positive active remediation plan, implement activity remediation plan pursuant to the Rule 62 780 700. If a minimum of 4 groundwater sampling events is required for the site rehabilitation, it should be considered complete when no further action criteria of subsection 62 780 680 or 62 780 682 and 62 780 683 have been met at least the last 2 sampling events. However, the contamination was only present with the unsaturated zone during the site assessment activity remediation plan task. The site rehabilitation should be considered complete with no further action. Criteria of the subsection 6278681, 6278682, 6278683. Full administration codes are met during only the sampling event. The remediation equipment may be maintained inactive for the operational status during the duration of post-activity remediation monitoring to avoid possibility of having it reinstalled if it is contaminating concentration rebound. When post-activity remediation monitoring is considered complete with the pursuant to paragraph 6278754F within the time frame specified in Table A with the cleanup added agreement documentation for the person responsible for site rehabilitation shall submit the department for the review of the electronic paperwork with the copy site rehabilitation completion report with no further action proposal. Site rehabilitation completion report shall include the documentation required for the paragraph 6278754D. To support opinion for the site cleanup objectives that have been achieved, the department shall provide the person responsible for the site rehabilitation with the site rehabilitation completion order with the reference to 6278687 for an administration code that approves no further action proposal. Notify the person responsible for site rehabilitation is writing and stating the reason for the site rehabilitation completion report does not contain the information adequate to support the opinion that the cleanup objectives have been achieved. The site rehabilitation activity shall not be deemed complete until such a time the site rehabilitation completion report shall include no further action proposal if approved. 8. If the site rehabilitation completion order is incomplete with respect to insufficient satisfy and the objective of the subsection 6278750C, 6. The department shall inform the person responsible for site rehabilitation pursuant to paragraph 6278757. The person responsible for site rehabilitation should submit the Department of Review electronic paper copy that provides the site rehabilitation completion report that addresses the deficiency within 30 days after the receipt of the notice. If the deficiencies are not timely corrected and cannot be corrected, the person responsible for site rehabilitation should resume the implementation of the approved post-active remediation monitoring plan within 30 days after the receipt of the notice. 9. Brownfields and the site rehabilitation completion order shall contain the following statements applicable based on the information provided by the real property owner, concerned property located in the interest, insert address, the opinion of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection that the party has successfully satisfactorily implemented approved brownfield site rehabilitation agreement schedule. Accordingly, no further action is required to ensure that the land is identified with the brownfield rehabilitation agreement is consistent with the existing and proposed use. The real property owner proposes to remove the institutional engineering control. The real property owner shall obtain the prior approval of the department. The removal shall be accompanied with the immediate resumption of the site rehabilitation implementation of approved control using criteria subsection 62780, 68081 are met. The site rehabilitation completion order shall constitute final agency's action regarding the cleanup of the activities at the site. Rulemaking Authority 376303, 37630771, 37630701, 37630784, 37630881, 403061, 403087, Florida State Law, and 37630 implemented 3763071, 376307001, 3763074, 37681, 403087. 7. History News, April 17, 2005, amended June 12, 2013. Alright, time schedules. 62780 is the containment site cleanup criteria time schedule. Site rehabilitation performed pursuant to the chapter shall include conduct with the time frame specified in Table A with this chapter, except if the person responsible for site rehabilitation has encountered into the cleanup agreement documentation in the Department of the site rehabilitation time frame specified in the cleanup agreement document, so will take precedence over the time frame specified in Table A with this chapter. If in the Department of the person responsible for site rehabilitation, the time frame specified in the chapter do not apply, unless specified otherwise in the chapter within 60 days of the receipt notification from the department that the plan reports that does does not contain adequate information of the information provided within support with the applicable criteria for the person responsible for site rehabilitation shall submit to the department requested for the information for review. A modification of the time frame may be obtained by the person responsible for site rehabilitation for action set forth in the chapter for good cause by requesting the written of the department make such a modification. The request shall be specified with the time frames is to be the modified amount of the additional time required, provided with the documentation supported with the good cause for the request. The request shall be received by the department at least 20 days prior to the time of the action is initiated. And if the emergency situation at the site do not allow full 20 days to notice, the request shall detail an emergency situation. Within 20 days receipt of the request for modification, the department shall notify the person responsible for site rehabilitation in writing any additional information regarding the request as needed. The department shall notify the person responsible for site rehabilitation in writing within 20 days of the receipt the request and he additional information request for or additional information as or whether the modification of the time frame will be allowed for the purpose of the paragraph. Good cause shall mean the anticipated events are outside the control of the person responsible for site rehabilitation. Applicable defines a reference pursuant to the chapter. It shall be told with the request for the modification of the time frame pending the failure of the person responsible for site rehabilitation to submit request information meet any of the time frame here and shall be violation of Chapter 376 or 403 Florida State statutes and shall be enforceable by the department pursuant to Section 376303 and 403 121 unless otherwise addressed by the clean up agreement document. And if there is no circumstance with that shall the department failure to meet any of the time frame constructed and approval by any of the planned action or by the department, rulemaking according 376-303, 376-3071, 376-30701, 376-30784, Florida State laws implemented 376-3033, 376-3071, 376-30701, 376-30711, 376-30784, Florida State History News, April 17, 2005, amended June 12, 2013. Alright, I'm having some trouble. Alright, I had some not responding in Word, but I hadn't reloaded it. 62, 780, 900 forms for containing site cleanup criteria. Forms used for the department each form by the department and its contained site cleanup criteria program are adopted but incorporated by the reference in Rule 62, 780, 220, and 300 Florida Administration Codes. Each form is listed with the subsection number, which also is the form number with the subject of the title, effective date. Forms may be obtained by the Division of Waste Management at departmentstate.florida.us waste. Form 62, 780, 901 initial notice of the containment beyond the property boundaries effective June 12, 2013. Form 62, 780, 902 chain of custody record effective June 12, 2013.